Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about conditional sentences. I decided to make a different video or a separate video for this topic because this topic can create a lot of confusion for some of you because we use different tenses in different parts of a conditional sentence depending on the situation. And I've tried to explain this topic from a different point of view, and hopefully this will be helpful to most of you, if not all of you. So, what are conditional sentences? These are sentences that are made by words like if, unless, and provided that. And they have two parts. The first part is an adverbial clause or a dependent clause. If you don't know what that is, you can watch my video about adverbial clauses. But basically, adverbial clauses are dependent clauses that attach themselves to a main clause, and they explain about the verb in the main clause. They add information to that verb. And then we have a main clause, which is an independent clause. Here is an example. If you work hard, you can get better grades. The first part is an adverbial clause or the if clause. I'm going to call this if clause from now on. And it is a clause because it has a subject, you, and it has a finite verb in simple present tense. And then separated by a comma, we have the main clause. Just remember that following the same rule, if clauses can also be used right after the main clause. It's fine. You can change the order. But once you do that, you have to get rid of the comma. The function that the comma has here is to just show you where the dependent clause finishes and where the main clause starts. But if you use the conditional part or the if clause after the main clause, the word if is going to be the separator, and it is going to show you where the dependent clause starts. Now, as I said, I'm trying to explain this from a very different standpoint. It's not very different. It's a little bit different, of course. But to understand conditional sentences, we need to understand the combination of time and reality or situations. And if we understand these possible combinations really well, we will be able to make really meaningful conditional sentences. So, in these situations or in the combinations that are related to conditional sentences, we have the time aspect, and the time can be past, present, and future. The second aspect is the reality aspect. We can talk about a situation that is real or unreal or hypothetical. I'm going to call it hypothetical from now on, but it is the same as imaginary situation or unreal situation. Now, you can combine any of these together and create 2 times 3, 6 different combinations, but that's not the case, of course. Some of the combinations are not possible, like real past. You cannot talk about something in the past that can be changed. You cannot go back and change the past. Conditional sentences are all about how the conditions would be different. So you're thinking about changing the situation and topic all the time. So you cannot really have past real combinations. So these are the possible combinations that we can have. Hypothetical past, hypothetical present or future, and real present or future. So in hypothetical past, we're thinking about something that happened in the past, and then we imagine its opposite or a different situation than what we actually experienced in the past. Hypothetical present or future is similar, but now we are thinking about things that are happening right now or things that are going to happen in the future and things that are not possible to change, but we are imagining that change. And finally, the real present and future, we are talking about situations that are possible to change or the conditions that are possible to happen at the moment or in the future. Now, I'm going to explain these through examples, and these are going to make more sense. So let's focus on the first combination, past and hypothetical. For hypothetical past, use past perfect or past perfect continuous in the if clause and would, could, or may with have plus the past participle form of the verb in the main clause, like would have passed. Now, I assume that you already know what these structures are in terms of making tenses or combinations for verbs. But if you don't know what these combinations are, you can go ahead and just check these in your grammar book. But basically, what we are trying to learn here is that each combination of the time and reality would have its own specific structure in if clause and main clause. So this is the part that confuses a lot of people. We are using two different structures, one in the if clause and one in the main clause, for the same combination or for the same situation. And if you just spend a little bit of time to kind of understand these combinations like past hypothetical, and then spend some more time to understand how each of these get connected to their specific structures in the if clause and main clause, then you shouldn't have any problem. Now, here's an example. If you had been listening to the lectures, you would have passed the test. Now, I'm going to explain why this is a hypothetical past situation. Now, I'm going to start with reality. The reality is that this person were not listening to the lectures, and they did not pass the test. So we are talking about something that happened in the past. It's over. Now we are imagining an alternative situation, a different situation. And because this is impossible and this is only imaginary, we have to use the specific structures that are related to past hypothetical situation. So here, if you had been listening, this is past perfect continuous. And then in the main clause, you are using the past form of or the perfect form of a modal like would have passed. This simply means that the person did not listen or were not listening to lectures and they did not pass. And the alternative situation would be if they had been listening, they would have passed the test. Now, the other combination is present and future and hypothetical. So present and future are bundled together because we use the same structure for both of them. And we are talking about situations that are true now and in the future. So we are focusing on what's going on right now and and this situation is likely going to stay the same in the future. So this is kind of a situation where present and future gets combined. So for hypothetical present and future, use the past tense in the if clause. It means that you can use simple past or past continuous, and would, could, or any other past modals in the main clause with the simple form of the verb like could buy. So if you made more money, you could buy a new phone is an example of this. We are talking about both now and future. So this person is not making more money, and this is not possible for this person to make more money. That's why we imagine this situation. And then the result is also imaginary. But both of the parts, both the condition and the result, are related to present and future. So if you made more money, means that you're not making more money, you could buy a new phone, which means that the person cannot buy a new phone. And present, future, and real. So this is a little bit easier to grasp because this is something that we deal with more in everyday life. Things that can be imagined to be different. Like this is actually more like a condition, the condition that is possible to happen. For this situation, use the present tense for the if clause and future tense. Actually, some people would argue that we don't have future tense. We only have the past and present tenses, and the future is an aspect. But I'm not going to get into that detail. You probably already know what I mean by future tense, like the verbs that we make using will. Anyway, so you will use the future tense in the main clause. So in this case, if I see Mary, I will invite her to our party, both the condition and the result are possible. So it is possible that I see Mary today or tomorrow or right now. Doesn't matter. So it's related to present and future, and it is a possible situation. I'm not imagining this. This can happen. And because this can happen, I can use the simple present or present continuous in the if clause and the future tense in the main clause. Now, there is a specific kind of combination that the grammar books normally talk about, and they just talk about it as an additional point. And I want to do the same here. And I want to call it always true. When we are talking about scientific processes, things that repeat themselves all the time, things that never fail. For these situations, we use the present tense in the if clause and again, a present tense in the main clause. What we are trying to communicate here is that basically both the condition and the result are possible and repeatable. They're always true no matter what. So if you heat water up to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. Of course, under the right conditions. I mean, if your water does not have particles, if it is pure enough, and if you do this under 1 atmosphere pressure, then yeah, you should be able to repeat this result all the time. Anyway, now, probably this is the most important slide, and this is the last slide, of course, and that is I want you to think really outside the box. Most of the time, we think that we have to use the same combination of time and reality in both the if clause and the main clause. But this is not the case. It doesn't have to be the case. So the if clause and main clause do not have to use the same combinations, although they do most of the time. They don't have to. Now, let's take a look at the example where both parts, I mean the if clause and the result or the main clause, use the same combination. If I had time, I would revise my paper. You should be able to guess that the first part is a hypothetical present or future. It means that now I do not have the time to do this, but if I had time, let's imagine that I had the time to do this, I would revise my paper. So both parts of this sentence refer to the same combination, that is hypothetical present and future. Now, here is another example, but in this example, I'm not using the same combination in the if clause and the main clause. If you had been more careful, you wouldn't be in hospital now. Now, if you look at the if clause, I've used past perfect, and you know that past perfect is used for past hypothetical situations. And then I'm using would plus the base form of the verb in the main clause, and this means that I'm talking about hypothetical situation at the present or future. So the times are different. Both parts are hypothetical, but the times are different. And this is possible. I mean, you don't have to limit yourself to use the same type of combination in both the if clause and the main clause. Depending on what you want to say, you can use any of these combinations, as long as it makes sense. Now here, it says, if you had been more careful, the reality is that the person was not careful, and you wouldn't be in hospital now means that the person is in hospital now. So the one way to really understand the conditional sentences would be a good exercise would be just convert these to the reality, what the reality is or was. And based on that, you would easily understand the meaning and the combinations that I've been talking about so far. So, in this example, the if clause uses a hypothetical past, but the main clause uses a hypothetical present. Now, just as an exercise, I would like you to leave a comment containing a sentence, a conditional sentence that is more like the second example. I'd like you to think about some example conditional sentences that actually use different combinations of reality and time in the conditional or if clause and in the main clause. Thank you for watching this video. Please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel. This would help a lot of people like you access these videos and content. If you find this useful, of course, then they can also benefit from these videos. Thank you.